Hi friends, host Eric here talking with famous people, and this video is going to be titled What I Learned About Men and Women from Nick and Jewel. So, if you're a member of the Talking with Famous People community who keeps up on stuff, then you already know much of the story here, but I'm going to recap it for anybody who's not familiar. About 8 weeks after Kimberly and I got together, I learned, much to my shock, surprise, and delight, frankly, that Nick had been talking to Jewel for some time apparently, and they decided that they were meant for each other. Such an idiot. Why did I put this in my mouth? I just started this video. My bad. Give me a second. Now it's a noun later, so it takes a little while to eat too. So Jewel was married, but had put a stop to that before, or had ended that marriage before moving on. It was pretty quick, but you know, the bottom line is she wasn't happy. She was in a bad relationship that she got into as a member of a very small community, probably afforded her a few choices for uh, mates or whatever. Anyhow, Kim and I met Nick and Julia in San Diego. We hung out. We did a thing. We had a thing. And they've been following behind our relationship more or less for the next 7 months. Kim and I have been together for about 9 months, a little over. And what we discovered is that in a lot of ways, their relationship mirrored our own. It would follow that we'd have a fight about something, then a couple weeks later, they'd have a fight about something that was similar. The fight would tend to be similar. We were able to provide guidance in the sense that this is how we resolved it, because we managed to resolve things. But one of the big challenges for Nick and Jewel was that Nick was here to get a job, be able to provide for Jewel and her kids, and make a family here. He was here for a good portion of time. He's been here since the end of November. But he it's obviously a lot of strain on our relationship if one member is here, not financially particularly enabled to support himself in the fashion he's accustomed, and looking for work. He was bouncing between Jewel's house and up here. It was necessary for reasons associated with Jewel's divorce that he not cohabit with her right away. And so there was a lot of strain on their relationship that has not been on me and Kim's relationship. In the end, after growing ticking clock kind of pressure, Nick pulled it out in the last second, got the job, got the fancy job with a big bonus or with a big signing bonus or a fancy title and the big salary that he had been telling everybody that he was capable of accomplishing. Well, he did it. But by the time he did it, there had been a lot of damage done to the relationship between himself and Jewel. And the reason this damage had been done is because he indulged in meaning smithing recklessly. So, what that means is if you're going to speak a lot of words and try to convince people that you're going to do something, and that you ought to be supported in that endeavor, well, then you should afford the weight to your own words that you're asking others to afford them. And in failing to do that, Nick sabotaged trust dramatically. Now, he didn't mean to sabotage trust. I'm quite certain that every time Nick said, I'm on to this thing now, and this is the one, that he truly believed it was the one, that he truly believed he now had a clearer vision of things, etc. So, the first thing I've learned about men and women in general, and this is not necessarily applied to all women, but I suspect it applies to most of them, is that women need to know that you can be trusted to follow through. This is a challenge for ENTPs or INTPs because, but especially ENTPs who tend to write a lot of checks. Their ego writes checks their body can't cash, as it says in Top Gun. But regardless, women need to know that their man can be trusted to follow through. And while this may be particularly so with the ISFJ, who relies a lot on actions as opposed to words to make her judgments, I think it's true of all women that, and it's implicit somewhat to the evolutionary process. There's been a lot said about how women relate to each other and to men much differently than men relate to each other and to women. So, the basic engine behind this tends to be explained through the reproductive engine of humanity. That women are concerned primarily evolutionarily with resource predictability. If you're going to get pregnant and you're going to have a baby and you're going to raise that baby to successful adulthood, ideally there won't be any periods of famine. You know, a couple little famines are okay. It doesn't fly if you're carrying a baby, right? If you're a lone dude out in the world and oh shit, it's getting dry around here. Well, I'll go figure my shit out someplace. I'll just go figure it out. I don't have to be tied to this place. I don't have to know for sure how I'm gonna get it done. It's got to kind of scramble and scrape to make my way in the world. It's a lot less overwhelming for a single man in the world to do that than it is for a woman with a child. And a woman is not always with a child, but a woman historically or evolutionarily has, up until around 45 or so anyway, always potentially been with a child, and mostly has been with a child, because if you didn't have effective contraception, the only way to not have a child would be to not have sex. Um, True, humanity has spent a lot of energy and time during certain sections of its development figuring out how to stop people from having sex, but shockingly, much to everyone's shock and dismay, they did anyway. So, naturally, if contraception is not available, then women are subject to pregnancy. And as a consequence, they look at the world more in terms of how men can interact with them. Now, men, as people who can mate without having to deal with being pregnant, and since men evolutionarily didn't really have any, they only had as much claim over offspring as they wanted to have. Paternity is a matter of opinion, maternity a matter of fact. So it's not now, but uh, but even now, it is for most people. I've never had Delilah genetically tested to prove that she's my kid, but I believe she is. My wife got pregnant when we stopped using contraception. She was my wife. It was right at the beginning of our marriage. I'm pretty sure she wasn't cheating on me yet. Uh, Delilah looks like me. Delilah acts like me. Uh, I just don't have any reason to doubt it. But if I did, I could test it. If I did in the olden days, I would never know. So, I mean, even if I found out that she was cheating on me, I still wouldn't know for sure in the olden days. So, obviously, since paternity was a matter of opinion and maternity a matter of fact, and since evolutionarily the woman has her mother hormone thing going on, it would make sense that the two genders would have different relationship with resources. And this expresses a lot in how relationships play out. For Jewel, she was being asked to take on faith that there would be ample resource sustenance or consistency uh, going forward with this man, that she could maximize her chit. All women do have this chit, even in the status quo. Men want to have sex with them, and some men want to have relationships with them. I'm such a man. So I would say that Kimberly did an excellent job of maximizing the value of her chit. But she's still not very happy with me because I'm not making much money right now. And I'm I'm not doing what Nick's doing though. That's the important thing. I'm not making a lot of statements about what she should believe. I'm when when there's a call to do that sort of thing, I ask her to work with me to understand that I, I'm confident in my that I always will, as I always have thus far, done what I have to do to provide the resources I need to provide for us to be sustainable. And I'm also confident that eventually we'll be very comfortable. And I don't have a particular specific thing I'm going to do or path that's going to lead us there that I can say, here's when the money's coming and stuff like that. So I have to ask her for her faith and try to ask her not to worry and to be confident that I will provide at least what is necessary for us. We're not going to get kicked out of the house or something for unable to pay the rent or something. Um, and understand that I am asking a lot of further. So, well, I do believe that I believe she did an excellent job of maximizing the value of her chit. I also understand that from her perspective, what's most important. So, one of the things I've learned from the Nick and Jewel story is that I have to make sure that I take words of intentionality, words of what I'm going to do, words of um, how I'm going to do it very seriously. I have to be cautious about saying such things and make sure that when I say them, I'm going to follow through on it. Thus far, I've done a pretty good job of that with Kimberly, and it makes me proud of my growth to see how that compares against Nick in their story. Now, the second thing I learned about men and women from Nick and Jewel is what it means to be a teammate, what it means to be a team, and what it means to play a game when you're in a relationship. So, being a team fundamentally means wanting the other person to win, not and wanting yourself to lose. It doesn't have to be zero sum, but wanting the other person to win. So there's a lot of times Kimberly and I fight, and in those moments, I don't want her to win the fight, but I want her to win overall. So what tends to happen in our fights now is Kimberly says something baity. I go meh, 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 meh. Then Kimberly says something irrelevant. Then I go. Then Kimberly goes. And I go. And Kimberly goes. At the beginning of the relationship, that was a very long process, and there was yelling, and there was, um, you know, entreating and crying. Why are you so difficult? Well, I've learned, right? I've learned and grown. That's the thing. So when I truly came to believe that Kimberly was wrong about something, and then that allowed me to say, okay, Eric, you need to grow up a little bit. She's just saying dumbass shit because she's a little annoyed at you or whatever. Don't give it so much credit. And you know how this is going to end. It just spirals into increasingly bomb-like nonsense. So from both of us, so I don't even bother. There's no reason to fight it out because if she actually is wrong, then I know that, and there's no point in putting it in her face because ultimately I want her to win. And if she's right, well, then I shouldn't be objecting to it anyway. But that's not usually the problem. Sometimes, but we don't usually have fights about actual things, right? She'll just say something kind of snippy at me, or she'll say, she'll complain about something that I'm doing nice for her, and then I'll be like, "Mah!" So, uh, in contrast, there's that teammate being a team and being a good teammate. It's about winning and wanting the other person to win. Now, what does it mean then to play a game? Well, a game is an issue in a relationship, or an event, or a goal, or something like that. So, a game for Nick and Jewel was Nick getting a job. Nick was in the middle of playing the game, kept throwing interceptions. He's a quarterback, he's throwing interceptions. He keeps blaming his receivers. He keeps blaming his linemen. They're coming off the field, and he's like, "Come on! If you hold that block 1 second longer, I make the throw. You need to go back to lineman school." And then he's doing this the whole time, right? And he's asking of his receivers, "Can you just please run a little faster?" And the receiver's like, "Okay, I'm trying, but you keep throwing interceptions, dude." He's like, "What? Don't you believe in me? You need to believe in me." Like, this is basically the way Nick and Jewel's thing played out. So Nick's asking for faith and belief all the time, and continually undermining it by throwing interceptions. And so, okay, but look, here's the deal. That's within the bounds of acceptable behavior because we all make mistakes in the games. And that's a kind of nasty, ugly mistake to be consistently making. But we all make mistakes in the games. So we know emotions run high in the game and things are important. And so people get intense. That's okay. You're still being a dick and not a good teammate, really, but okay, fine. If you pull it off, fine. So, lo and behold, fourth quarter, down 40-0. Here comes Nick marching down the field. Onside kick, whatever. Oh, look, you won the game finally. Last second, you won the game. All right, fine. But here's what happens in the locker room afterwards. If you have any sense at all, you go in there and you say, Let's celebrate together. I'm sorry I was a dick out there on the field. My emotions got the better of me. Yada, yada, yada. Only an unacceptably bad teammate goes into that locker room afterwards and says, all right, now listen, you guys, you got to sit down here and we're going to talk. I proved what I was saying out there right now. I proved it. You were not running fast enough, and you were not blocking well enough. I want you to say you're sorry. I want to see you groveling. I want to see you broken beneath me. You just won the game, motherfucker. What are you doing? So, the second lesson I learned from Nick and Jewel is don't force people to submit ever if you want them to be somebody who you can love and they can love you back. I tried to do that kind of shit early on with Kimberly. I try to say like, okay, she's not listening to me. She's not doing what I want. What leverage can I find? I need leverage here. I need her to feel the pain of disagreeing with me, of failing to see my perspective, of failing to act right, think right, behave correctly. And I try a little bit to use that leverage. But the thing is, I always had such clear, bright lines about what was acceptable and what was not. So, for example, here's me punishing Kimberly earlier in the relationship. I'd say, listen, I'm going to go out for a while. I'm not going to drink, and I'm not going to do anything that's unacceptable in a relationship, like cheat on you or talk to chicks or whatever. But I'm not going to tell you where I'm going. That's how I just punish Kimberly. All right, so you'll note I didn't cross any lines. And I made a point of saying, I'm not going to cross these lines, but I'm going to still do this thing that you don't like. It didn't help.
I don't think you made it on a driveway.
No, I did. I went and played poker.
Oh, you did?
Because what happened was, what she said in response was, well, fine, then I'm going to go out and not tell you where I'm going. I said, do you promise not to do anything, blah, 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 blah? And she said, yeah. I said, okay. Go ahead. Because there's nothing to my threat, right? I'm going to go away for a little while and not tell you where I'm going, but promise not to do anything you won't like.
And then we're going to throw cotton balls at each other.
Another way that I punished Kimberly early in the relationship was to smoke in the house. If she was being incredibly intransigent, I would just, fuck you! And I'd go, sit in the house and. There! I smoke in the house! How you like that, bitch?
And then what happened?
You'd get.
I threw a purse at your head.
Yeah, she'd do a purse at me. She'd pull her FE attacks out. She wouldn't get like, you're smoking in the house. She'd be like, you're such a little bitch. That was her attitude, She wouldn't say that, but she'd give me that attitude. And of course, it was very unfun, It's funny now, in retrospect, but that experience of struggling through what basically was each of our fears and egos, it was very unfun. But the reason we were able to get through it and grow and become what I believe to be a pretty excellent couple at this point is because we're teammates. We ultimately want what's best for each other. And critically, I don't usually forget that. Now, any ENTP is going to go through a period called "but I'm right." But I'm right is a stretch of time of varying lengths between when you launch off on this path of action or words or argumentation that's been initiated by some ideas of yours, some narrative stuff. Like, but Kimberly said X and X means Y, and God damn it, that's just there's no avoiding this reality, and she cannot do this kind of thing, you know. And then at some point you persist and persist and persist with your ideational way of arguing and trying to position and all that kind of stuff. You persist in this stuff, and then at a certain point you are forced to realize by either circumstances, by sanity or something, that you're you're fighting a battle about the territory at odds with the map. Uh, So you're saying my map says this. We are going to go left. Okay, Eric, but look, I know the map says left. I agree that we both agree the map says left. That it doesn't go say left, but you'll see there was an earthquake, and now there's a big hole in the ground here. If we go left, that's not a good way to go. That's what you're just talking about your feelings now. You're talking about how no, I'm talking about reality, and you keep looking at your fucking map. So ENTPs have this map obsession, right? And growth, for one, is the ability to open one's eyes and recognize that authentic intentionality issues that ISFJ particularly cues in on are actually the the real meat of the thing, and it's not our symbolic representations of that. So what Nick wanted was Jewel to give him a bunch of symbolic representations of faith. What he didn't want to do was earn them. She was supposed to have faith and therefore be saying things that display faith. But of course, authentic faith, which an ENTP doesn't recognize as a meaningful distinction, authentic faith produces its own words of affirmation, unbidden and unsought. Oh, yes, we should reassure each other. Yes, we should say nice things to each other. Yes, we should do FE shit. But if we think that we should get to hear somebody tell us that they authentically believe in us when they don't, if if we think we're entitled to that that's what it means to be in a relationship, we're completely insane. And if we persist in it against all sense and data
Delusional.
and insightful friends telling you things, if we persist against all of that, then we suffer consequences as ENTPs. We have chosen our own delusion, as Kimberly says, over a reality that's much more rich and rewarding. So those are the two things I've learned about men and women from Nick and Jewel. Number one, follow through on what you say. Number two, don't try to force them to do shit. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. It's the most delicious product dairy.